My name is Antonia, and I am 24 years old. I was born in a small town in southern Chile, but my story truly began when I was adopted. My adoptive parents, the Rojas, were a family from Santiago with fair skin and light eyes. They always made me feel loved, but the physical difference was undeniable. I was the only one with dark, curly hair and a darker skin tone. From a young age, this difference marked me. I grew up in an affluent neighborhood in Santiago, surrounded by comforts. My parents gave me everything, but the feeling of being different persisted. It was a subtle shadow that accompanied me. At school, children sometimes asked cruel questions. "Why don't you look like your parents?" they would say. I would smile and say I was special, but it hurt. At home, I found solace in music. My adoptive grandmother, a wise and sweet woman, taught me to play the guitar. She said music was the language of the soul. I spent hours in my room, strumming the strings. It was my refuge, my world. Melodies allowed me to express what words could not. My parents, though not musicians, supported my passion. They bought me a good guitar and enrolled me in classes, but my true learning was self-taught. Often, I felt like a solitary melody in someone else's symphony. My friends came from families similar to mine, and I was the exception. The different Antonia. As I grew, music became my secret identity. It was something just mine, something no one else could understand. It was my anchor in a sea of uncertainties. I dreamed of a day when my music could speak for me, that it wouldn't matter my origin or appearance, only the truth of my notes. It was a distant hope. Music was my voice, my comfort, my escape. In it, there were no differences, only harmony. It was the only place where I felt completely myself. My adoptive parents, though loving, sometimes didn't understand my need to explore. They wanted me to fit in, to be like them. But I was something else. I felt a deep connection to roots I didn't know, a melancholy that only music could soothe. It was as if my soul remembered something forgotten. The guitar was my most loyal confidant. With it, I could be vulnerable and strong at the same time. It was my companion in loneliness and joy. Thus, between chords and silences, Antonia grew. A young woman searching for her place in the world, clinging to the melody that defined her, ready for whatever came. Despite my parents' love, family dynamics were sometimes complex. There were implicit expectations about how I should be, how I should act. Subtle reminders of my other origin. At family gatherings, comments about my hair or skin were common. "How exotic," some aunts would say. "So different from us," others would murmur. They were never malicious, but they accumulated. They made me feel like a puzzle piece that didn't quite fit. A beautiful work of art, but from another collection. My parents, in their eagerness to protect me, sometimes minimized these differences. "You are our daughter, and that's all that matters," they would say. And I believed it, but society didn't. Music became my personal sanctuary. In my room, with my guitar, I could be free. I could explore melodies that resonated with my soul. Often, I found myself playing songs I hadn't learned. Melodies that seemed to emerge from within me, ancient and familiar. It was as if I remembered them. My parents encouraged me to play more classical or popular music, but I gravitated towards more folk, deeper sounds. Music I felt in my bones. It was an internal struggle. I wanted to please my parents, but my heart called me elsewhere. My music was my truth, and I couldn't betray it. My friends, though kind, didn't share my passion for music. Their interests were more superficial, more focused on fashion and social media. I felt increasingly isolated in my own world. Music was my only confidant. It understood me without words, without judgment. Sometimes, I wondered if my biological origin had something to do with my musical inclination. If there was a cultural heritage calling me through the melodies. It was an idea that fascinated and scared me at the same time. Who was I really? Where did that inner voice singing in me come from? The guitar was my bridge to the unknown. Each chord was a step closer to discovering myself. It was a solitary but beautiful journey. In that corner of my soul, music was my constant companion. It whispered secrets to me, comforted me in sadness. It was my refuge, my home. Thus, amidst expectations and differences, my passion for music grew. A seed planted in the darkness, waiting to blossom. Santiago, with its mix of modernity and tradition, was my home. Yet, I often felt like a tourist in my own city. My dreams were different from those of my peers. While my friends planned careers in finance or law, I dreamed of sounds. I wanted to create, compose, make people feel what I felt with music. But that dream was a secret. My parents, though supportive, expected me to choose a stable profession. Music was a hobby, not a career. So, instead of formally studying music, I immersed myself in self-learning. I spent hours in libraries, searching for old sheet music and folk recordings. I discovered the richness of Chilean music, especially Andean and Mapuche melodies. There was something in them that deeply moved me. It was as if I had heard them before. I practiced in secret, in my room, or in a small studio my grandmother helped me set up in the basement. It was my sanctuary, away from curious eyes. There, I experimented with different instruments. Besides the guitar, I learned to play a bit of the charango, an Andean instrument. Its sound was magical. Sometimes, I recorded myself. I listened to my own interpretations, seeking perfection. I wanted every note to tell a story, to convey an emotion. It was a slow and solitary process, but rewarding. Every time I mastered a new melody, I felt a small victory. One step closer to my true self. My parents noticed my dedication, but attributed it to an intense hobby. They didn't imagine the depth of my commitment, nor the ambition brewing. Music was not just an escape, it was a quest. A quest for my identity, for my voice. It was my way of understanding the world and my place in it. I felt like an artisan, weaving threads of sound into a unique tapestry. Each melody was a reflection of my soul, of my deepest longings. In that secret space, I dared to be vulnerable, to let my emotions flow freely through the chords. It was my therapy, my liberation. Society told me to fit in, to be like everyone else. But my music whispered the opposite. Be yourself, be unique, be authentic. And so, in the quietness of my refuge, Antonia transformed. From an isolated young woman to a budding artist, ready to share her voice with the world. One day, an invitation arrived that changed my routine. It was for Sophia's birthday party, one of the most popular girls in my social circle. An important event. Sophia was charming, but her world was different from mine. Her parties were always ostentatious, full of influential and superficial people. It wasn't my scene. Normally, I would have found an excuse not to go. I preferred my quiet nights with my guitar. But this time, something urged me to accept. Perhaps it was curiosity, or the subconscious desire to fit in, to prove to myself that I could navigate that world, even if I felt out of place. My parents were excited about the invitation. "It's a great opportunity, Antonia," my mother said. "You'll meet interesting people, have fun." I bought a new dress, something elegant but understated. I wanted to feel comfortable, but also presentable. I didn't want to stand out too much, nor go unnoticed. The week before the party, I felt a mix of nervousness and anticipation. I mentally rehearsed conversations, greetings, as if it were a performance. In my studio, music was my anchor. I played soft melodies to calm my nerves. The guitar was my silent companion, my unconditional support. I thought about bringing my guitar, but immediately dismissed the idea. It would be too daring, to me. I didn't want to draw attention that way. The party would be at Sophia's mansion, in one of Santiago's most exclusive neighborhoods. A place where wealth and status were evident in every corner. I imagined the people, the whispers, the glances, the feeling of being watched, of being judged. It was a battle I had fought many times before. But this time, I decided it would be different. I would go, observe, and leave when I wanted. I wouldn't let myself be affected by others' expectations. It was a test for myself, an opportunity to face my fears, to see if I could be Antonia, the Antonia who loved music, in that environment. The night approached, and with it uncertainty. Would it be another night of isolation, or would something unexpected happen? Only time would tell. With a sigh, I put away my guitar. The party awaited me, and with it, an unknown chapter of my story. On the night of the party, the air in Santiago was fresh and vibrant. I put on my dress and looked in the mirror. I tried to instill confidence in myself. My parents dropped me off at the mansion's entrance. Lights shone, and music was already audible from inside. It was an imposing event. Upon crossing the threshold, the grand hall revealed itself before me. Hundreds of people, laughter, clinking glasses, a whirlwind of elegance and superficiality. I searched for Sophia in the crowd, but it was hard to spot her. I felt small, almost invisible, amidst so many people. A stranger in a sea of acquaintances. The first few minutes were awkward. I walked back and forth, trying to look busy. I smiled at faces I didn't recognize, or barely remembered. I saw some acquaintances, but they were in closed groups. It was hard to approach them. I felt an invisible barrier. The same one that had always accompanied me. The background music was commercial pop, loud and generic. I didn't connect with it. I longed for the depth of my own melodies. I headed to the drink table, looking for something to hold. A glass of water, perhaps. I needed a moment to breathe, to take in the atmosphere. Meanwhile, whispers surrounded me. Short phrases, hollow laughter. I felt the stares, though I tried to ignore them. The different girl had arrived. I realized that my dress, though pretty, was simpler than those of the other girls. They wore dazzling jewelry and high-fashion designs. The feeling of being the darker one wasn't just about my skin. It was about my essence, my way of being, which contrasted with the artificial brilliance of the party. I wondered why I had come. Why expose myself to this discomfort? The answer remained vague, a mix of curiosity and self-affirmation. I found a quiet corner near a window, from where I could observe the party without being the center of attention. It was my usual position at these events. The hall was beautiful, opulently decorated, but I felt like a dissonant note in a perfect melody, a piece that didn't fit. And so, Antonia immersed herself in the party atmosphere, isolated in the crowd, but with a silent melody resonating within her. Hours passed slowly at the party. I felt increasingly like a piece of furniture, ignored by most. The isolation was palpable, almost physical. I tried to start some conversations, but the responses were short, the smiles forced. People quickly turned to other groups. No one seemed interested in me, in what I thought and what I felt. It was as if my presence was an anomaly, something that didn't fit into their scheme. I overheard snippets of conversations about exotic trips, prestigious universities, and luxury brands. Topics that felt alien, distant to me. I felt like an observer, a stranger in my own social life. The label of the adopted one and the different one seemed to float in the air. My eyes fell on Sophia, the hostess, surrounded by friends. She laughed easily, radiating confidence. She was the center of attention, the sun of the party. I, on the other hand, was the shadow, the one who blended with the walls, waiting for the night to end. The contrast was painful but familiar. In my mind, melodies began to emerge, a form of escape, of comfort, my own soundtrack for loneliness. I remembered my grandmother's words, "Music will always be with you, Antonia." And at that moment, I felt it more strongly than ever. Frustration grew within me. Why was it always like this? Why couldn't I just fit in, be one of them? The answer was simple, it wasn't me. My essence was different, my path was another. And that night, amidst the superficiality, that truth became clearer than ever. I felt a pang of sadness, but also a spark of rebellion. I didn't want to be just one of them. I wanted to be myself, with all my differences. I looked around me at the smiling, empty faces, and in that instant, a decision began to form in my mind. A bold, impulsive idea. Music, my refuge, my truth, could also be my voice. It could be my way of breaking the silence, of making myself heard. The isolation had pushed me to the limit, and at that limit, I found the courage to do something unexpected, something that would change the night. As frustration reached its peak, my eyes fell on a grand piano in a corner of the hall. It was covered with a cloth, almost forgotten. A bold idea crossed my mind. What if? The idea was so crazy it made me smile. What if I played? My heart began to pound. It was crazy, I knew. It would break all the party's etiquette rules, but the need was stronger. I approached the piano, as if drawn by a magnet. My fingers brushed the keys, feeling the cold wood. It was a call, an invitation. No one was paying attention to me. They were too busy in their conversations. It was the perfect moment for my small rebellion. With a sigh, I lifted the cloth. The piano was majestic, imposing. I sat on the bench, my hands trembling slightly. I thought of the melodies that had accompanied me all my life. Those that emerged from my soul, those I felt in my bones. One in particular came to mind. It was an old, almost forgotten Chilean folk melody. A song I had discovered in an old book of sheet music. It carried a deep melancholy. I took a deep breath, closed my eyes for an instant, and my fingers began to move over the keys. The first note resonated in the hall. At first, it was a soft, almost inaudible sound. People didn't notice, but I kept playing, letting the melody grow. The music was my voice, my silent scream. It was my way of saying, I am here. I am Antonia, and this is my truth. The melody was simple, yet laden with emotion. It spoke of roots, of earth, of a deep longing. It was the story of my soul. Slowly, conversations began to die down. Heads turned. I settled on me on the piano. Silence grew around me. The music filled the space, enveloping everyone. It was a moment of pure magic, of unexpected connection. And in that instant, I knew I had made the right decision. I had let my music speak for me. And the world, finally, was listening. The melody I chose was an Andean tune, an ancient lullaby I had found. It had a deceptive simplicity, but immense depth. My fingers moved with a fluidity I didn't know I possessed. It was as if the piano and I were one. The music flowed effortlessly. People, who had ignored me before, now watched me. Their expressions changed from curiosity to awe, to a reverent stillness. The tune was melancholic, but also full of hope. It told a story of resilience, of the beauty born from the earth. I could see Sophia, the hostess, in the crowd. Her usual smile had vanished, replaced by an expression of genuine surprise. Some guests took out their phones, recording. Others simply listened, with their eyes closed, letting themselves be carried away by the music. It was a surreal moment. The girl who had been isolated, the different one, was now the center of attention. And not because of my appearance, but because of my art. Every note was a whisper to the soul. Every chord a heartbeat. The music was a bridge connecting everyone in the hall. I felt a surge of emotion. It wasn't applause I sought, but connection. And I was achieving it, note by note. The melody built up, adding layers of complexity. My inner voice guided me, telling me what chords to play, what rhythm to follow. It was a pure, unpretentious performance. Just me and the music, sharing an intimate moment with an unexpected audience. When the last note faded into the air, the silence that followed was profound. It wasn't an awkward silence, but one of awe. Then, timid applause began, and quickly turned into an ovation. People stood up, clapping enthusiastically. My eyes filled with tears, not from sadness, but from overwhelming joy. I had been seen, heard for the first time. In that moment, Antonia was not the adopted one, nor the darker one. She was the music, and the music had dazzled everyone. The applause resonated in the grand hall. I rose from the piano, feeling a mix of relief and euphoria. The faces that had ignored me before now smiled at me. Sophia approached, her eyes bright. "Antonia, that was incredible," she said with a sincere voice. "I had no idea you played like that." Other guests came closer, congratulating me. Some asked where I had learned, what kind of music it was. They were genuinely interested. The atmosphere of the party had changed. The superficiality had dissipated, replaced by unexpected curiosity and connection. I felt as if an invisible barrier had broken. I was no longer the isolated girl, but the one who had brought magic to the night. People asked me to play another song. My heart filled with gratitude. For the first time, my music was valued, celebrated. I played another melody, this time my own composition, inspired by the landscapes of Chile. It was more modern, but with the same deep soul. The second song was received with the same enthusiasm. People listened attentively, some even hummed the tune. It was then that I noticed an older man, with gray hair and piercing eyes, observing me from a distance. His gaze was intense. It wasn't a judgmental look, but one of recognition. As if he knew me, or knew my music. It unsettled me, but also intrigued me. The night continued, full of conversations and music. I felt part of something for the first time. My music had opened doors. The feeling of being the darker one, or the adopted one, faded. In that moment, only the music mattered, the universal language. I realized that my art was my true identity. It was what connected me to the world, beyond any label. The party, which had begun as a test of my loneliness, had turned into a celebration of my authenticity. And so, Antonia, the music, and the night united in an unexpected symphony, a moment that would change everything. As the party began to disperse, the older man who had been observing me approached. His presence was calm, yet imposing. "Excuse me, young lady," he said with a soft, deep voice. "My name is Ricardo Valdez. I am an ethnomusicologist, and I have dedicated my life to Chilean folk music." My heart skipped a beat. An ethnomusicologist? That explained his gaze. He understood the depth of what I had played. "The melody you played at the beginning," he continued. "That Andean tune, it's a very rare piece. Almost extinct. From a community in the Atacama foothills." I gasped. That song had emerged from me, from an old book. How could it be so specific? "My grandmother, may she rest in peace, was from that community," Ricardo said. "She used to sing me that very same lullaby. It's a family melody." He looked into my eyes, an expression of awe and curiosity. "You don't seem to be from that region, but your interpretation, it's identical to the way it was sung there." A pang of something unknown went through me. Could it be? Could there be a connection to my biological origin? "Could you tell me more about that song?" he asked. "And about yourself, if it's not too much trouble. Your talent is extraordinary." I told him my story, my adoption, my love for music, how the melodies seemed to emerge from within me, as if I remembered them. Ricardo listened intently, his face illuminated by understanding. "This is fascinating, Antonia. There's something more here, I feel it." He offered me his card. "I'd love for you to come to my studio. We can explore this together. There's much to discover in your music." The revelation was overwhelming. The music that had isolated me at the party now connected me to an unknown past. The initial disdain had transformed into a bridge to my identity. The night had been more than a party, it was an awakening. And so, amidst the surprise, Antonia found a clue to her roots. An unexpected path, guided by the melody of her soul. The days after the party were a whirlwind of emotions. Ricardo Valdez's offer resonated in my mind. Could my music be the key to my origin? My adoptive parents, upon learning what had happened, were amazed. They had always supported my music, but this was different. It was a deep connection. Ricardo Valdez was a respected figure in the world of ethnomusicology. His interest was a validation of my talent, but also a door to the unknown. I visited his studio, a magical place full of ancient instruments and rare recordings. There, we shared hours of music and conversation. He helped me unravel the roots of the melodies I played. He showed me patterns, rhythms, that were specific to certain communities. The Andean tune I played at the party was, in fact, a lullaby from a small town in the foothills, almost forgotten by time. Ricardo had contacts in that community. He suggested we could travel there, that perhaps we would find more clues about the song and, possibly, about me. The idea filled me with a mix of fear and excitement. Was I ready to face my past? To discover the truth of my origin? Meanwhile, news of my performance at the party spread. I received invitations to play at other events in small cafes. My music was starting to have a voice. Sophia, the party hostess, became an unexpected friend. She supported me, encouraged me to follow my passion. The superficiality had dissolved. I realized that the isolation I felt was not a condemnation, but a preparation. It had forged me, given me the strength to be authentic. My music was no longer a secret. It was my flag, my way of presenting myself to the world. It was Antonia's voice, unfiltered, unmasked. Life was changing rapidly, from loneliness in a corner of the party to the possibility of a journey that would reveal my identity. Every note I played now had new meaning. It was an echo of my past, a bridge to my future, a call to adventure. Antonia was ready to embrace her story, her music, and the path opening before her. The journey had just begun. The journey to the Atacama foothills with Ricardo Valdez was transformative. The landscape was arid and majestic, full of raw beauty. In the small town, people greeted us with curiosity. Ricardo explained my story and the connection to the lullaby. When I played the melody in the town square, an elderly woman approached, her eyes filled with tears. "That's my grandmother's song," she said. "She used to sing it to her children." The elderly woman turned out to be a distant relative of my biological mother. She told me stories of my family, their music, their traditions. I discovered that my biological mother was a talented weaver and singer who had left the town seeking new opportunities. Music ran in my veins. There was no dramatic reunion with my biological parents, as they had passed away, but I found an extended family, a community that welcomed me with open arms. The Andean tune was not just a lullaby, it was a legacy. It was the voice of my ancestors, which had resonated within me without my knowing. I returned to Santiago with a full heart. I had found my roots, my identity. Music had been the compass that guided me. My musical career took off. With Ricardo's support, I released my first album, a fusion of Chilean folklore and contemporary sounds. It was a success. My story became known. The adopted girl who found her voice and her origin through music. It was a narrative of overcoming, of authenticity. The loneliness of parties was left behind. Now I played on big stages. My music reached thousands of people. But the essence remained the same. The darker, adopted Antonia had become Antonia, the artist who dazzled everyone. My difference was my strength. I learned that true acceptance comes from within, that we don't need to fit into others' molds to shine. Our authenticity is our greatest treasure. If you ever feel isolated or different, remember that your uniqueness is your power. Seek your voice, your passion, that which makes you shine. And let your music, whatever it may be, dazzle the world. Your story is unique, and it deserves to be told. Thank you for listening to mine.